Unfiltered. Like you're in another world, like you zoned out. You know what I'm saying?
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Georgii Speakman, and today's guest is the lovely and talented Jella, a globally recognized authority in data, analytics, and AI leadership. She has been honored among the global top 50 and 100 leaders in data and analytics, awarded Women in AI throughout APAC, the Asia Pacific region, and ranked among the top 25 leaders in Australia. Sue happens to also be my co-author, internationally best-selling co-author on our book here at the AI Revolution. Let's put it right up close and personal in your face so you can take a good look. And her chapter is The Dawn of Synergy, Human and AI. It was a really prolific chapter, Sue. I really, really enjoyed it. So welcome to the show. Can't wait to dive in
Awesome.
with you.
Thanks so much, Georgie. And, what a pleasure to be able to speak to your audience as well. And more importantly, to be able to co-author and network with you. It's such a great opportunity to meet experts globally. It's not something that you easily can collaborate on at the moment. And to be
No,
able to do this virtually, it's so fantastic.
it is. We were very lucky to be a part of this project, which has been a great time all round. The other thing that we obviously share in common is that we're originally from Australia. I'm in the
Yes.
States these days. You're based in Melbourne, but traveling a lot. Tell us a little bit about how you got into AI. Where did that journey really kick off? Because you make so many tremendous points, which I'm going to double down on shortly. But I'm just curious, when did either your genuine work ethic efforts sort of kick off in the realms of AI, and or when did you develop a very specific love and interest for the artificial intelligence ecosystem?
I can't say that there was a specific point in my career that, delved into AI, to be really honest, because so much of my career has been gradual in the AI as well as data space.
Yes.
Um, but I started off in market research, and a lot of that is data centric, stats, maths, analysis, interpretation, insights. So much of that is centered around understanding customer behavior, why they do what they do. But in order to actually build out those processes and build out the understanding, there's a lot of automation involved.
Hmm.
So I would say I've been involved in AI in bits and pieces in different projects around my journey. But the most pivotal point at which AI was what I did was probably about 5 to 6 years ago, where I had to employ a lot of automation, but
Hmm.
also start to use things like text analytics or unstructured data and build out processes that actually could make it much easier for businesses to make decisions. And that
Right.
was centered around AI. So the generative AI that's, created the entire AI bubble has actually existed much longer
That's
in the
right.
last 2 or 3 years that we've been using it. So yeah.
It's funny how it's just when certain things hit mainstream media and social media more, on a grander scale that all of a sudden AI is here. But quite frankly, it's been around for many, many years, arguably however many decades. It used to obviously be called transformers
Yes.
or referred to as that. So I think to your point, been seeing degrees of automation and varying capabilities for quite some time. Um, Being Australian myself, I think there is a very healthy and thriving business community in Australia, but there is always that sort of, particularly when I was in Los Angeles, the sort of perception that LA and San Fran, Silicon Valley, Silicon Beach, etc., some of these other major cities are always a good 10 years ahead of the rest of the world, particularly Australia, which was great because spending time in LA in those earlier days, you're seeing all of these really incredible and exciting startups come to market before they were hitting other countries and so forth. With you and your work and you and your global travel, and having been on, maintaining a role on such a prolific stage and having that voice for AI, what's your take on the, I guess, AI revolution in Australia? Are you seeing similarities and patterns? I mean, there's obviously certain platforms, tools, and companies that have been rolled out globally and are accessible to all. But I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are on the Australian market, perhaps versus some of these others, whether it's like pockets of Asia versus the States?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the Australian market is different in some areas, it's leading, whilst in other areas they're taking a bit more of a reserved or conservative approach, and
Hmm.
let's just wait and see what happens. I'd say when it comes to things like UX and using AI in UX design, Australia is actually really good. They
Hmm.
do take a very human-centered, user-specific approach versus other countries. And it's interesting because it's not spoken about that often or that
Mm.
avidly. Whereas America, I would say, in terms of accessibility of information, it's explosive. So it's far more ahead than what we do in Australia in certain ways. But then if you look at the Asian markets, sometimes getting access to information is actually much harder than you would think. Whereas in Australia, pretty much every business from being a small business to a much larger enterprise has a listing on digital spaces, and it's easier to access that information. So it really just depends on what the category of information is that we're looking at. I would say in some cases, when it comes to regulation, Australia is behind. And so when it comes to AI regulation, they're probably just taking a let's wait and see approach. But there's, of course, a lot of pressure from the global environment for Australia to improve their regulatory environment. We don't really penalize as drastically and as extensively as other markets. But now, because we are interacting with a much wider and bigger global market, there's pressure to change our laws. So, as you know, the privacy law, for example, in Australia only really changed last year. And that's the first time since 1989. And that's a really long time,
That
considering
is.
how the internet has actually changed our lives and how digital has impacted every business. If you don't have a digital footprint, you don't exist. And so to take that many decades to actually change the law means that we are behind in some cases. I would just say that in Australia, there's a lot of things that's easily accessible, again, depending on the category, whilst there are just some things where investment is not there. Unfortunately, for the budget year, we did not get investment in AI. So, what does that mean for us? It just means that we're going to lag behind in AI opportunities and innovation. There's going to be less AI hubs or opportunities to innovate with AI. Whereas in other organizations across the world, there's a lot of investment from government for AI as well as data practices. So, in an industry that is really moving very quickly, we don't have enough investment like we should.
Wow, yeah, no, that's a great answer and obviously very, very insightful. And to your point, I agree. There are some aspects of Australia that definitely seem and feel more, advanced in certain areas. For example, traveling from America back to Australia, going through the airport and experiencing greater facial recognition and things like that,
Yes.
that you don't have, say, in American airports in the same capacity. Everything seems to be quite digitally savvy. And I do wonder if Australia's relationship and being so close to Asia and those markets, China, etc., has sort of influenced some of those technologies from that perspective. So
Yes.
there's that part. I would absolutely agree with you that there are some aspects where Australia is ahead. And then it's interesting because I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I did connect with some South Australian folks from Adelaide University and others where they're really trying hard to put Adelaide on the map as one of the most progressive, innovative AI forward, operating and thinking and driven cities in the world. Is that also your perception?
Again, it depends, right? I think Adelaide is growing really quickly because there's a lot of investment from a jobs perspective. As you know, quite a few government agencies are investing in Adelaide, where it's now the main hub. So, yes, it's definitely accelerated. But in saying so, you could compare it to Sydney and have a very different experience.
Right.
So, again, depends on what you're looking at from a jobs perspective, as well as from a perspective of growing really quickly. Adelaide is growing very fast compared to what it did previously, but also in comparison to other cities. At the same time, it doesn't have the population dynamics of the urban areas like Melbourne, Brisbane,
Hmm.
as well as Sydney. So that will take a bit longer to accelerate. But interestingly, if you look at the property market, it's not that different to what we experience in Melbourne and Sydney.
Hmm.
So again, I think we have to cherry pick some of the categories that apply to that understanding. Or alternatively, we also have to look at what is it that actually resonates with organizations that evolve tech in a location like Adelaide, even Perth for that
Hmm.
matter. Um, if I just think about what's been happening over the last 5 years, a lot of people didn't really know where Adelaide was, and now
I
they
know. I get asked probably at least probably I want to
do.
say 60% of the time, where's Adelaide? When I say South Australia, they just go, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Adelaide's
Oh,
not quite on the map in that same way.
yeah, exactly. And it's the same with Tassie, they always say it's a
Yeah,
country off Australia.
right. That's right.
So yeah.
You've kind of spoken to the cherry picking
Yes.
in your again from your lens through your set of eyes. What industries and sectors in Australia and sort of associated markets are you seeing the biggest boom and rise in AI? So for me here, at least in Atlanta, because of Emory and a huge healthcare medical footprint, I want to say that a large majority of efforts are in that particular space. And
Yes.
obviously some others too, perhaps a bit of legal, maybe a bit of insurance and what have you. But healthcare medical definitely is leading, it seems, at least in the southeast. What are you seeing sort of come into the fold, rise rapidly, get the attention of perhaps investors or just general AI growth?
Healthcare is not leading over here, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Interestingly, a lot of medical centers or healthcare facilities or hospitals, they still rely on fax machines.
Yes,
Interestingly enough,
the paper
which
trail. Yes.
yeah, exactly right, which is unknown in some locations, probably in the US, where everything is probably a digital interaction. So healthcare is not quite leading from an administrative perspective. But I would say from a research perspective, a lot of investment is being made into health. So there's been some really good revolutionary research that's come out from healthcare in Australia based on using AI to understand cellular level DNA opportunities for managing cancer. And we've got the Peter Macker Institute here, which is really advanced in a technological sense. And they do so much from a healthcare perspective for people suffering with cancer. So there's a really strong social good aspect. So again, if we're looking at it from an administrative perspective, probably not that great. But from an actual application based perspective that's being researched, there's a lot being done in Australia. But in terms of leading industries, I'd say banking has actually been really good in terms of doing fraud detection, understanding how users interact and interface with banking applications, be it on the website or on an app. Australia has done really well. And my understanding is based on my research and interactions with other audiences, um, that particular interface, user experience, has been much stronger than what's available in America. But again, it's based on the audience and what the audience wants. It's definitely way better than what's being done in Asia, having dealt with quite a few Asian markets and Asian applications. Australia is really strong in the banking sector. From an insurance perspective as well, using AI capabilities has been around for goodness, maybe over 10 years actually. So, for the purposes of your audience, insurance uses, really intricate detail, like if there's a tree in front of your house and it's not in front of the house of your neighbor or the neighbor opposite you, um, you'd notice that there'd be a price difference where because you have a tree, you're at a higher risk of incurring possible damage. And so your house would have a higher insurance premium than your neighbor's house. So
Smart.
something as simple as that has very intuitive and automated calculations in the back end for a customer service representative to provide to you a quote or a price just based on your location using object detection. So that's been around for about 10 years. So in that respect, insurance has definitely moved ahead. I'm not saying whether it's the right or wrong approach, but it's a very advanced approach that's being used to provide personalized or more one-to-one based pricing recommendations. So that's again a very strong area. Another area where I would say there's been really good advancements, but opportunity for more advancements is education. And
Right.
if
Yeah.
we look at the Australian market, education is a massive hub globally. And there's huge dependency on bringing in international students into Australia. So there's a fair bit of automation and understanding of the markets that need to take place. There's a lot of objectives as well as areas that I've worked in previously when I worked in education that is now only being applied now in certain industries. So education has already applied some of those principles
Mm.
quite, a number of years ago. But in saying so, it's not that they're market leading, but it just means that they have done a lot of practices that have existed for quite some time, and now they're at a point in their journey where they can actually advance with some really good um, technological changes.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible. Again, incredible insights and a very well thought out answer. Um, I am curious to understand your take and your approach to staying up to date with the best in class AI tools and platforms in your day to day efforts. We're all so busy, and I'm just seeing, particularly out of San Fran, just in general, obviously the explosion of so many different AI tools and capabilities. And even last year, we were looking at working with a global class action law firm on some offerings, and between that first conversation and perhaps a few weeks later, there had already been a few new AI tools in the legal industry that had fallen out of the sky, that was going to solve a couple of those things. So it's really, really interesting to see how many of these tools and in these all these different sectors and industries just like coming to market. So how do you manage your personal time, efforts, energy? I mean, you're obviously doing a lot of research just sort of naturally in what you're doing, but yeah, speak to a little bit about that.
Oh, it's really hard, Georgie. Um, I mean, just the moment I'm speaking to you now, 5 minutes later, once this call is over, there's probably something new I'm going to learn
Right.
because it's evolving really quickly. If I think about something like quantum computing, and this is probably already outdated information. There was a forecast that quantum computing would be a thing in the next 50 years, but it's probably more likely a thing in the next 3 to 5 years because there's
Yes.
so much work already being done on
Yes.
something like quantum computing. So my point being is, how do you keep up, right? It's incredibly hard, and I use a lot of AI tools. There's at least one AI tool I would use a day. So definitely, it's become the Google of this age,
Yes.
this century for sure. And it's like, it's a household name now to use ChatGPT or
Yes.
Copilot or whatever it is that you need to use. Keeping up is it's something where you have to practice it. You have to make it a daily habit. It doesn't mean you'll know it all, but you have to find a topic that's of interest maybe for the day or for the week and follow that through and be able to keep up with the evolution of it and how it's changing and what the opinions are of a lot of people. The challenge I feel is that a lot of the learnings and a lot of the information that's out there is probably a lot more academic versus it being absolutely practical. Because when we start to think about what we can apply in our business context, the reality is we haven't solved the business problems of 10 years ago.
Mm.
So, as much as information is moving really quickly, how applicable it is to the business environment is less likely. And so, yes, it's more of an interest to follow this information and follow the changes in the market versus can I really apply this?
Right.
And that's where it becomes a bit more challenging. Just in terms of keeping up, I make a note to myself to spend maybe 5 minutes at the least a day just to read up on what's happened in AI today. Or, not even AI specifically. Maybe it could be startups. It could be a new learning opportunity. How do you learn in an environment that's very quickly evolving? So, just
Hmm.
finding passion topics that can actually help me
Right.
grow as a person. But also, more importantly, I enjoy continuous learning because what I knew yesterday is probably not useful anymore. And so I need to stay relevant. So I need to know what can I speak about tomorrow. And a big passion for me is actually information sharing. I love sharing information, talking about it, and learning from others. And so, if I have to keep up with that network or with that pace, it means I need to continuously teach myself as well. So, from that perspective, it really helps to just know what's going on out there on a daily basis.
100%. And this has been coming up quite a lot, which is the micro learning and curiosity, having that curiosity to keep the growth, education, learning going, the DIY sort of approach, and taking charge of your own education as opposed to feeling helpless. I actually touch on a lot of that in my own chapter, and
Mm,
even relate AI to concepts of sort of almost self development, which is if you are a take charge, ownership, curious, DIY, let's go, let me just embark upon the micro learning journey, then you won't suffer and get left behind. But I feel like if you're not a curious person by nature, which unfortunately is a hell of a lot of society and humanity, you're probably going to find it a little challenging at some point if you haven't been willing to be open and curious to actually embrace AI, which you're going to have to. Or I think a lot of the other ladies that I've spoken to so far, we've sort of all agreed that you will sort of get left behind.
mm.
So that's going to take me on to some of these other points here, which are in fact your points from your beautiful chapter. You just literally said it here. Every day is a new potential of every day a new potential of AI is discovered. So you literally just spoke to that,
Yeah.
and it couldn't be any more true. But we have to carve out that time for learning more now than ever before, because we can't just rely on a degree that we got 10, 15, 20 years ago anymore. You know, we just have to be a lot more hip and accurate and timely with it. But
Yeah.
I'm quoting your part of your digital realms and futuristic visions, exploring cyberspace, cyberpunk, and superhero AI. There was one, area here that I really liked, which is countless stories have depicted AI as both a formidable threat and a benefactor, painting a picture of dystopian takeovers and utopian symbiosis. The fear of AI surpassing human authority is juxtaposed with visions of AI enhancing human life in unimaginable ways. Amidst this duality, we must seek to understand where we truly stand. So let's ask ourselves, what do we want to achieve with the revolution of AI? And then to go beyond that, you're talking about avoiding pitfalls and having to prioritize the development of standards, processes, and obviously ethical guidelines for AI. We recently had Atlanta Tech Week here, and one of the panels that stood out to me the most was talking about that very subject matter, which is all the ethical guidelines and security and things like that. How are you able to best navigate that space? What advice do you have for organizations that perhaps haven't doubled down on thinking about that yet, or perhaps are even avoiding it because of the actual costs in association with even accomplishing basic things like SOC 2 and HIPAA compliance, for example?
Yeah, it's a good one. Because I think organizations react when something drastically negative happens in their reputation. And I think that's the key call out, right? Is unless an organization is going to experience reputational damage, they don't probably take it seriously, which is a really, really negative way of looking at ethical AI or ethical data and governance, which is one of the reasons why contributing to AI revolution was a really strong passion project for me,
Yes.
because it gave me the opportunity to say, let's use technology, but also have filters, also have boundaries as to the extent in which you want to use AI and technology. You actually need to have guardrails. As great as it is and as accessible as technology is, it's no good if you can't actually deploy some regulation. And it doesn't mean it has to curb innovation. It actually means you have to try and work within some boundaries, like the law. If we said there was no law, there'd be people doing all sorts of criminal activities without any inhibition. It goes back to some of the movies we've seen in the past, like Judge Dredd and Terminator, and all the wonderful sci-fi fiction, sci-fi movies that we absolutely enjoy. But there's actually some really strong themes in there around regulation, around law, around boundaries. Um,
Yeah,
and
you
so,
just took
yes,
the
so when it
words out of my
comes,
mouth.
sorry, Georgie.
You just took the words out of my mouth. It's funny how it still relates back to the human experience, that in human
That's right.
relationships, you obviously need boundaries. And
That's
so
right.
it's funny that please carry on, but you're making a really great point.
Well, I was just going to say, going back to your original question is how do you start to take account of this from a corporate perspective or even an individual perspective? I think we very quickly start going down the path of let's get a consultant, let's get a strategy together. But actually, you may have the internal talent to bring together the problems. It all starts with pain points. Interestingly, a lot of organizations have so many pain points with their data, which just need a bit of
Right.
governance. And so, if you start to bring together teams of people who can talk to you about their data and their pain points, you'll automatically start to find rules and principles that can help to manage the existing data that you do have. That will then evolve into good quality AI outcomes. We all know the adage around AI hallucinations and AI not being accurate. And even today, if you look at many leading technology companies, they still haven't got AI right. And I'm talking about the top five. And that just comes down to understanding what is the end user looking for and what is the data that we have that will generate good quality AI outcomes. So it all starts with asking the question. It does not mean you have to race into an investment pool
Right.
to get a consultant to get a strategy together. Many times organizations are first looking at, let's go and get the best strategy consultant to develop and design a program for us. But it doesn't actually stop there.
Oh, I love that. I just think that's so smart. And again, your chapter is just brilliant. And just before we close out today's conversations, because I could talk to you for hours and hours, I
Yes.
love this other point you make here in the book, and it's just to really sort of share some of your thinking here, which is, and you kind of just touched on this a little bit, but the next 100 years will be shaped by the choices we make today. If we approach AI development with a focus on collaboration, transparency, and ethical responsibility, we can create a future where AI serves as a powerful tool for human advancement. So it's a good summation of some of the things we've just touched on now and today. But this almost sort of encourages that organizations have to step up in their ability as human beings to advance as people, to operate simultaneously to the advancements of AI. It's almost a call on humanity to do better and be better at the same time, because if we don't, it could honestly have some terrible effects. What's your take on how to, I mean, you kind of just touched on it, like lean into the people that you have and like get deep into the journey of curiosity and self-education. What other sort of advice or sort of things would you like to share as it pertains to that snippet in your book?
A few things. But the two key things that I want to talk about is don't always look at something like AI and technology as well as data as a commercial outcome. And many times we focus on that, what is my return on investment from a commercial perspective? Yes, absolutely, there needs to be commercial outcomes. There are so many other opportunities we could leverage with AI
Yes.
from a social good perspective.
Yes.
And the more social good you do, the better outcomes you're actually going to have for society. And, if we just look at something as simple as we are using AI to replace simple mathematics, is that really worth it? You're spending so much just to replace simple mathematics using AI, but the overall environmental impact is far worse. And there needs to be some guardrails around things like that. Is that what we should be using AI for? Or could we be using it to help aged care, to help healthcare, to help understand diseases that are so rare that don't have any funding? Isn't that where we should be generating our efforts? There will be commercial outcomes to that, but there's also social benefits to that. So we really need to change that dialogue around how are we starting to use AI and how should we be using it? Because too much effort is just being put into a commercial outcome where even if you want to see returns, it'll take actually years. It's not going to be instant. A lot of organizations have the misconception that ChatGPT grew in a day. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but the actual inception and training and testing and programming started in 2017. That's
Mm.
almost 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Do organizations have 10 years to wait to have a bespoke AI model that is relevant to their business? We don't know. Some organizations do, some organizations don't. But if you look at it from an organizational context, 95% of organizations have not been able to adopt AI, to the extent that we as end users are experiencing it at this point in time. So I really think we need to change that dialogue around, is there only commercial benefits to AI? In my perspective, no. I think we really need to look at it from a socially impactful and positive relationship with AI. And another key thing I wanted to also add is organizations need to take more accountability for training programs. The world is changing really quickly. And if you're starting to employ AI practices or technologies, you need to bring your employees on that journey. Not enough effort is being made to bring employees on that journey. So you're definitely going to find that disconnect of the synergy of human and AI, which is what I've been trying to promote, is that we absolutely need both to work together, but they need to come on that journey together as well. If we look at the practices of the last 10 or 20 years, nothing has really changed from a generational perspective. There
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been succession planning for Gen X's or millennials or
Yeah,
Gen
right.
Zers. And in the next 10 years, millennials and Gen X's are going to be leading the charge for organizations. But what succession planning has been put in place for them? And now
Mm.
that we've, been through such a huge evolution of change, especially with technology, there needs to be even more succession planning and more training programs to bring people on board. So these are some of the things that can actually start to happen now, but investment and organizational thinking, design thinking needs to be brought to the forefront in that
Mm.
conversation as well.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with all of what you've just shared. That is again a brilliant answer and some fabulous insights that are very practical for anyone and everybody that is listening to this interview. And if there's anyone that can lead the charge and be a voice of that change and encourage these right sort of practices and ways of thinking, then of course it can be you, Sue. So continue
Yeah.
on that journey. You have my full support and encouragement.
That's
I'm
both
very
of us, Georgii. That's both of us.
Yes, I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to connect. And, you're just such a bright mind. It's brilliant. Again, I could talk to you for hours. I can ask you 1,001 more questions, but I would like to close out our conversation today just with thanks and gratitude for your time, and just to give you the opportunity to share any sort of final thoughts on where the industry is headed, or it could be anything to do with or related to AI. If there's anything that you feel you haven't shared today that you might like to sort of impart, whether that's wisdom or insights based.
I'd say there's a strong appetite for a lot of efficiencies to be brought to our lives, both organizationally, professionally, or even individually. I don't think people need necessarily more appliances and more tools. They need better use of time. They want to be more efficient. And if AI can help us to be more efficient whilst still bringing through our best selves and our best talents, let's not lose our natural ability to be critical thinkers, to be
Yes.
curious explorers, and to
Mm.
question things. I think, especially for the younger generation, being alphas and Gen Zers, my note to them is don't become too dependent on technology. Try and use your beautiful inherent talents of critical thinking and questioning what we do and why we do and what AI is doing and why it's doing it. But make it a part of your life to be more efficient. And, like I always say, work smarter, not harder. So,
Mm.
thank you so much, Georgie, for the opportunity. It's been so amazing talking to you and your audience. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to collaborate with you on the AI revolution.
Sue, Jella, and her gems, everybody. I want to give her a round of applause. In fact, I think there's a funny feature in here somewhere where I can actually press clicking. I swear to God. I mean, not clicking, clapping. All the things. I can go like
Yeah,
this, or I
some
can put in
reaction. I'll
all the
take
different
it.
reactions. Yes.
Yes.
So cute. I have to
Awesome.
throw in a reaction there somewhere. But Sue, thank you so much again. I'd love to continue to talk with you and keep building with you, and looking forward to seeing what we can continue to accomplish as a group, as best-selling co-authors. I can't believe it was a best-selling book in 3 markets: Canada, the US, and Germany. So everybody, again, get your copy of the AI Revolution, even just a really cool Bible, AI Bible to have sitting around your room, on house, office, living room, whatever, to pick up and just muse over. You're bound to learn something wonderful. Sue's chapter is 151, page 151. So Sue, where can everybody best stay in touch with you and reach you going forward?
So if you purchase the book, contact details are there. But if not, you are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you just search for Sue Jella, I believe there's only one of me. You'll easily find me. And yeah, just drop a note, connect with me, and it'll be great to get in touch and speak to more people who have some passionate topics and interests around AI, data, and technology in general.
Absolutely. I will obviously include your links in bio, so everybody just check and look out for those. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. We would love your active involvement and our participation in sharing the conversation. And of course, for everyone and anybody listening right now, stay unfiltered on your beautiful AI journeys, because here's to the future. So
Amazing.
thank you again, Sue. I'm really grateful for you, and we'll speak soon.
Same here. Thank you.
Unfiltered.
Like you're in another world, like you zone out. You know what I'm saying?